Resident Evil Ending Explained. Netflix have decided to take on the beast that is Resident Evil and tackle a franchise that has had its ups and downs over the years. With this new adaptation following two different timelines and containing many creatures, zeros, and twists that change the trajectory of the show on several occasions, I thought I'd jump in and explain all that there was to take away from the ending. So let's get into it. Here is Resident Evil Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The ending of the show provided a somewhat satisfying resolution, but it also still left a lot of questions to be answered, which I imagine we'll see in Season 2 of the show. I'm going to break this video down into the two different timelines that we had so it's easier to discuss as there was a lot going on. In the timeline in 2022, we had Jade and Billie inside of the Umbrella facility, where they found out that their father Albert was in fact a clone, and that he created the two girls, Jade and Billie, to serve as a means of keeping himself alive. Their very existence is only there due to the fact that he needed their blood to balance out his internal system, as when he was created by the original Albert, he aged them 20 years in 6 months, which came with its own complications. Earlier on in the season, Billie was bitten by the dog that had been tested on and was kept in the lab, and over the course of the season we'd seen her manage to survive the 3-day period where a subject usually showed a bad response to the virus. However, although not turning into a zero, she was lashing out and elements of it were taking over at points. This is what tied into the final scene that we saw them in. In a ditch attempt to escape the facility after we'd seen Billie get taken there and be tested on, Albert was being held captive, and Jade, Simon and Bert were going there to try and save Billie. Her symptoms were becoming ever more present, as she was having the hallucinations that were described, along with the sensitivity to the loud noises of the alarm going off. This led Billie to hit her sister Jade, and to then take a bite out of Simon, a person who had helped the both of them throughout the entirety of the show, despite the fact that his mother was Evelyn, the head of Umbrella. This showed the impact of T being within her system, as she was blindsided by what was going on. This meant that Simon was likely going to have a bad reaction to the bite, and the T virus would be present within him, turning him into a monster within 3 days. This was somebody who Jade cared for, and had a genuine connection with. It appeared to be one of the only friends that she made after moving to the new location with her father, hence why it weighed so heavily on Jade's mind. We saw Albert state how he would be able to find a cure for him, but we saw Evelyn go on to kill Simon, her own son, the very person that she cared the most about in this world. We heard earlier on in the show that she was giving her wife joy, to keep her happy and responsive to everything that she wanted her to do. This was so that her wife wouldn't leave her like she was planning on doing when she wasn't on the medication. She planned on taking Simon away from Evelyn due to the fact that she prioritized her work over her family, and she couldn't take it anymore. This is why I was extremely surprised when she did kill Simon herself. Rather than holding out on the chance that Albert would be able to cure him of the bite, she stated how she'd rather him not become a monster, and then went on to blame Albert for taking everything away from her. After this happened, we saw Albert state to his daughters that they need to get out of the facility, and they need to go to an address and find Ida Wong, who is a well-known character in the franchise. We saw Albert sacrifice himself and allow Bert to go and live a life with the girls, due to the fact that he felt as though he deserved it. Bert was held in captivity at Umbrella for 17 years, whilst Albert went off and lived a life with a family in the real world, so he very much felt as though he had his time, and it was now the other clone's time to experience what it's like in the outside world. Also, Bert seemed like a more well-equipped fighter, so I imagine that's another reason as to why Bert would have been preferred. We saw the group escape with Albert letting off a bomb shortly after, blowing up Umbrella and destroying the facility with all that was within it, other than the creature that was shown to Bert earlier on, which is a zero-type being that seemed to be far more advanced and menacing. We know Evelyn managed to survive the blast as she was in the timeline that was in 2036, but it appeared as though a lot of everything else had been destroyed. As Jade, Billie and Bert were heading out of New Raccoon City, we heard Billie state how she didn't mean to hurt Jade or Simon. All the while that this was happening, we got the impression through Jade's expressions that deep down she didn't accept the apology, and almost didn't recognize her sister, based on the behavior that she'd expressed. Billie stated, "You and me together," where Jade then also responded with the same, but with a lot less passion and care, highlighting that she didn't view her sister as the same person that she previously did. The relationship of the sisters was on the verge of tatters, and I believe this was the moment that marked the beginning of the end of the sisterly relationship, and that's where the timeline then rounded off. In the 2036 timeline, they hate each other, and something went wrong, which we found out was due to that fateful night that we witnessed. But more is bound to most certainly happen, and we'll see how they went from being sisters in the car to Jade being under the impression that Billie was dead. In the 2036 timeline, we were finishing up with Jade having been double-crossed by her sister when she was captured and then freed earlier on. Billie planted the same tracking device into the head of the Zero specimen so that it would allow them to see where the university was. Billie wanted all of history to essentially be gone due to the events that had previously occurred. She believed that she was creating a better future, just like Evelyn believed when she was in that role, and Jade's daughter B was key to all of that. We watched a battle unfold between the Umbrella forces led by Billie, who we know is now leading the company and controlling Evelyn as a puppet, with some new technology that they likely created. These forces were up against the ship that contained the university, which Jade was aiming to get back on. Once Jade got back on board, they released a beast that was waiting under the water. They released it onto land, where we saw it decimate everything in its path. Whilst this was going on, we saw Jade realize that her daughter B was no longer on the ship, and that she'd gone to land based on what Jade said to her earlier on in the episode. She had adopted an escape plan just like we saw her father did. We witnessed the beast go charging towards B, where it then stopped. We saw it smell her and not attack her. This was because Jade had altered the DNA like we saw Albert do to the twins. It's not revealed what it is that she did, but pheromones were something that were heavily discussed in this show, so I would imagine that she emits a pheromone that prevents these beasts from attacking her. Something that is valuable and could potentially stop Zeros from attacking anybody that could naturally emit it. This was witnessed by Billie, and once Jade was back with her daughter, we saw a speech between the twins occur. Jade mentioned how the night when they were younger where she bit Simon was the worst night of her life, and the time where she felt as though she lost her sister. However, Billie proceeded to state that it was the best night of hers, showing the polar opposite sides that the two sisters sit on. When Billie was younger, she was fearful, full of anxiety, and thought a lot of what others perceived her as we saw in episode 1 of the show. Whereas once the T-virus was within her system, it stripped all of that away and allowed her to be the person that we were witnessing in 2036, somebody that had none of it anymore. She believed that she was the future, and people like that would prosper. Jade was begging for B not to be taken, but in a cruel twist of fate, Billie fired at Jade and took her daughter, due to the fact that she was the preferred one to take. I imagine because of the superior DNA that they'll be able to retract and manipulate, plus there would be less of a fight if she were to go. Billie mirrored Evelyn's behaviour from the 2022 timeline, where she stated how she wanted to change the world and be the future, so I'm wondering if a similar path is on the horizon for Billie. This is a story that is again only just beginning. Jade is likely going to survive all that occurred in this timeline, and we'll see her want to go on and rescue her daughter, where I imagine we'll find out why she's so special. Both timelines were extremely interesting. However, I did find it quite jarring the way it would cut between the two. I much preferred it partway through the season where we had a whole episode on each, as it made it a lot easier to digest and keep the story on track. The creature that we saw awake in the closing moments in the 2022 timeline is something that I think we're going to see come into play a lot in season 2 of the show, and the ante will be upped far more, as we'll see how the population gets taken over by the T-virus and go from 7 billion people to 300 million people. So, Resident Evil Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, character breakdowns and theories and predictions, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review next, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of Resident Evil? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.